Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be installing Torklift's SuperHitch on my truck, which is a 2018 Ram 3500 dually diesel crew cab. I'm just going to be using eTrailer's installation video for the same product. I'll leave a link to that down in the description, but they had the exact part number and the exact truck that I'm installing it on, and their installation video quality is going to be way better than what I could do. The only thing that I'm planning on adding to this video is how to install this hitch if you already have a Hellwig Swaybar. So because I have the Hellwig Swaybar, the brackets that are on the frame are going to interfere with the brackets that you need to install this. But Torklift and Hellwig apparently talk to each other at some point, because in the installation it says this hole used for aftermarket swaybar installation. That is this hole right here. So these brackets go up against the frame. So my understanding is I'm going to remove the straps that came with my sway bar, and I'm going to put the bolt through this hole instead, which is actually a really elegant way to do it. Now that's all it said in the installation manual. I looked online trying to find someone else that had done it, and all I could find online was that people did do that. However, I couldn't find any pictures of how it's done. So today I contacted Torklift and I contacted Hellwig. I asked them the same questions. Torklift told me that definitely that's what that's for. And I said, it looks like I'm just going to put a bolt through it. And they said, yes, but you might want to contact Hellwig to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So I contacted Hellwig's tech support, talked to them on the phone, and they sent me an email with a picture attached that shows how it's bolted together. And so later in the video, I'm going to get to that. So just to be transparent, Torklift did send me their SuperHitch and their SuperTruss out for free in exchange for me making some videos about the system. But to be totally honest, there's nothing else on the market that I would even consider buying, so I would have ended up buying this anyway, even if they didn't send it to me. Now, Torklift hasn't paid me to do this, they just sent me out their product. But the very first thing I needed to do is make sure I have all of the parts, and then I'm going to get going on the installation, so let's go. So I pulled everything apart, and just as a warning, this hitch setup is heavy. I don't know exactly what the weight is. I think this is like 85 pounds, but it's built like a tank. The SuperTruss also comes with a parts inventory. So everything that you see here on the table and these two big brackets down here come with the SuperHitch. Everything you see down here comes with the SuperTruss, and I've gone through both of these parts inventories and I made sure that everything is here. Sometimes these boxes get beat up during shipping and they lose parts. I had that happen with my Hellwig Swaybar, and it ended up delaying the installation by 2 weeks because I needed one bolt that I couldn't get at Home Depot or Lowe's. So the other thing is that I'm putting this on a flatbed. So the hitch is actually going to be sitting down here. It's going to look a little different than if you had a factory bed. So what I did before the install is I did a bunch of reading and I watched a bunch of YouTube videos to see what other people had done and what problems they might run into. The best video that I found was this eTrailer installation video. They have it up on a lift. They explain it well, it's quick, it's concise, and it told me everything that I need to know. And what I did is I laid under my truck like I am now. I watched the video and I made sure that I could point to everything that they were talking about. The first thing I need to do is remove the spare tire and the heat shield. It sounds like reinstalling the heat shield is optional, but because I have a diesel and the exhaust pipe gets very hot, I'm definitely going to be putting it back in. The other issue is that I have this Hellwig Swaybar, which is fantastic. I'll leave a link to that video down below too, because this thing has been like a complete game changer. I had found online that this bar that goes up here, interferes with exactly where the hitch mounts, which is right up in here. A little easier on this side, I think. So this bracket I'm going to remove. This bolt will then go through that strap that I showed you in the trailer. It'll bolt to the side, and it looks like you need to add some washers in here to add some support for the sides of the bushings.
Use infinity switch.
That does mean that you're only going to have bolt support from one side, but based on how this works, I think that would be fine. I would keep an eye on it. It may cause this bushing to wear out a little faster. All right, so the first point of interest, I used my drill to lower the spare tire, which worked great, but after 67,000 miles, the ribs that the tire sits against chafed, little wear marks into the tire. Now, it doesn't look like it's bad enough that the tire's bad. They're just maybe like a millimeter or two deep. This one's a little deeper. Yeah, you can see it. It's, I don't know, a couple millimeters deep. Not too bad. I'm sure it's fine. If you guys have old spare tires on your truck, might be something to look at. These rocks are pretty brutal on my knees and my elbows trying to climb around. I'm used to doing this kind of work, at least on like pavement or concrete, but this is some large gravel and it hurts. I got the tarp laid out, I have a little kneeling pad, and I got a couple yoga mats, and that should definitely help. Oh yeah, much better on the knees. Ow.
You're going to need to remove the heat shield located here. There's going to be 4 bolts here on the side that we're going to need to remove. We're using a 10mm socket to remove those.
All right, so I already have the tire out.
We'll take the longer bolts that come in our kit. We're going to put a star washer on it, followed by the longer spacer. We're going to thread that onto our fish wire. We'll then feed our hardware into the open hole here in our frame.
So the very first step is installing bolts and washers into this hole. Next thing I need to do is remove the Hellwig Swaybar. All right, now I'll just finish removing the brackets and we can move on to the next step. That was a little harder than I had hoped for. The nuts were jam nuts, so you have to loosen them the whole way. I remember putting them on when I installed it and they were pretty difficult. So anyways, now I can start with basically the first step. Got the manual so I can follow along.
We'll then feed our hardware into the open hole here in our frame. And then we're going to pull it back like that. Now we'll take our small side plate. We're going to slide that down the fish wire on that top hole until it goes into place there. We can now remove our fish wire. Now you don't want to pull it off, you want to make sure you thread it off because we're going to have to reuse this fish wire for all of our hardware. Make sure you keep the bolt out and don't drop it into the frame. Slide a flat washer on it, followed by a lock washer and a nut. And we just want to leave it hand tight, kind of a little loose like that.
This bolt has some thread damage, so I had to pull it off. And now I'm just cleaning up the threads using the nut because I couldn't get it to thread in easily. So it might be a good idea to run a nut down all of your bolts first to make sure that they are going to thread on properly. I'm just going to snug it up, not really snug, loose actually.
Hand tight, kind of a little loose like that. We'll now take our fish wire again. There's an open hole in the bottom here, just behind our smaller side bracket. We want to go up through that hole and feed that all the way back until it comes out the back of the frame.
Ran into an issue. You have your hitch receiver tube and the frame rail goes around it. When I passed it through, I ended up going up over the top and there's not enough space. If you go on the bottom side, it works much better.
And like before, we're going to take the longer bolts. We're going to slide on a star washer, followed by one of the 2" by 2" plates. We're going to thread that onto our fish wire, and then we're going to feed that into the frame. You will likely have to feed in the plate first before you can feed the bolt in. And we're going to pull it back and drop it down through the hole.
I'm to the part where I need help.
If you go rearward from the hole we just did, you'll find another opening in the frame. We're gonna again use our fish wire to go through that hole. And just like we did in the hole that was forward of that, we're gonna use the same size bolt, star washer, and plate, thread it onto that, and we're gonna pull it through in the exact same way. We'll again take our coiled wire off. We're now going to lift our large side plates into position.
Can you kneel? You can kneel on that. Yep. So I need to lift this up. I'm going to align these bolts.
What are you trying to lift up?
This thing.
Oh.
Let me just make sure I'm doing this the right way.
So you want to make sure that the square is towards the rear of the vehicle and that the L angles are facing outward. We're going to lift it up, line up the bolts that we pulled through the bottom of the frame with the holes in our side plate. You want to make sure that you don't push the bolts back up into the frame, as it can be difficult to get them back out. I'm just going to install a nut on there to help hold it up.
Okay.
We're going to move on to the other bolts, and this time we're going to use all the hardware we need. So we're going to start with 2 flat washers, followed by a lock washer, and finally a nut.
This all actually works pretty well. I'm sitting here looking at the mechanical aspects of it. Look at the leverage that this has against the frame versus this, which obviously is very strong, but this has a lot more mechanical advantage and more frame surface area. So all of this together is very strong. Of course, it puts a lot of stress on the frame itself, but this area of the frame is designed to handle the main suspension of the truck. So this region of the frame should be very strong. I'm going to feel much more secure having my hitch extension attached to this monster than just this. So this is on, it's loose. The very first instruction tells me to loosen these bolts so that you can more easily align the factory hitch with the new hitch. But since they welded my bed to the top of it, that is not going to work for me. So I'm not going to go through the hassle of doing this. I just hope everything aligns properly. Unforeseen issue, but I'm certainly going to keep my fingers crossed that it all just fits. I got to say the Torklift instructions they're a little hard to read, and the pictures are not very high quality. The eTrailer video is much better, but what I'm doing with the eTrailer video is I'm watching it for the visual cues, and then I'm cross-referencing it with the installation instructions. So far, everything is exactly the same, and it's much easier to follow a video than it is to read these instructions. So Torklift, if you're seeing this, the instructions are detailed, but they're very, very difficult to understand and read. Just from an outside perspective, it's not intuitive or easy to follow. A big thanks to eTrailer for doing those videos, very helpful. All right. So now I'm just going to repeat all of that on the other side.
Feed our hardware, open holes here in our frame.
All right, I'm going to try to do this without any help from the wife. Okay, so I have a question. I got to call Torklift.
Thank you for calling Torklift. All calls are recorded for training purposes. To check the status of an order, press 1. For customer service, sales, and tech support, press 2.
Thank you for calling Torklift. This is Hunter. How can I help you out today?
Hi, I have a quick installation question on a Torklift SuperHitch.
Okay. Do you have the part number by chance?
I'm looking for it right now. It is D1108.
Yeah, what seems to be the question?
So you have the main side bracket that goes to the frame, and then you have the what looks like a number 7 plate. Where those two meet, there's a bolt that goes through it, and you use one of the 2x2 square spacers in between it. On that particular bolt, there's no indication that you're supposed to put washers on the outside bolt head. It only says to put washers on the inside, which doesn't seem right to me because the hole that it's going through is quite large and it feels like it needs a couple washers there. So I was just trying to find out if that's something that's just missing or I missed it in the instructions.
Let me put you on hold for 1 second. I'm going to read through it and talk to my team. I'll get you an answer here in just 1 second, okay?
All right, thank you. Your tech support's great. I don't know if I have enough washers because it doesn't say to do this in the instructions.
All right, sir. Are you still there?
I am, and actually I think I found it in the instructions. I just had to reread it a few times.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was reading it over myself, just making sure I understood. So from what I understand, just to make sure we're on the same page, you put the 2 flat washers on, the bolt, put the bolt through the plate, put the 2x2 on, put it through that, and then you have 2 flat washers, a lock washer, and then the nut.
I was reading it as I understood that the 2 flat washers on the inside with the nut, but I couldn't figure out that it was saying it for both sides basically, and I just wanted to make sure because I don't want to run out of washers. That makes total sense.
Yeah, no worries.
I appreciate you confirming that for me.
Yeah, of course. You have a good rest of your day.
You too, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. The eTrailer video does not indicate that, and then I read the instructions for Torklift. It's just, there's a lot of text, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of 1/2 inch by 2 inch and 1/2 inch and 2 inch by 2 inch and 5/16. So it's just a lot of numbers. So when you're going from step to step and then you're doing this and then you're coming back and trying to find out where you were, it's a little confusing. Definitely for this bolt, you want 2 washers on both sides. Now I can go back to watching my video. So that's the big thing, is if I ever have a question or I'm unsure of something, I just call support, and their support is great. They're good to work with, so never hesitate to call, but always make sure that you're trying to do the install during their opening hours.
The side plate, smashing our spacer in between the two.
All right, now it's time for the center section. Oh, wifey! It is time. I got that other side on. I just need help with the main part.
I'm glad you didn't even break your nose.
I didn't. I already did that with my brother's drive shaft.
Right.
You want me to tell you that story again?
I don't.
I smashed on my face, broke my nose,
That's why women live longer.
and then my eye filled with blood.
No, honey, don't. I don't like this.
You know, have I told you the story?
Oh, yes.
I can tell you again. No? But I bet I could probably give you some details that you forgot. Yeah, probably.
Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to lift our center section in position. You want to line up the side of the center section tube, slide it through the square opening in your side plate.
Okay.
You're then going to slide a bolt through inside, going outward, followed by a lock washer and a nut. Once you've got one on each side, it'll hold itself in position, making it easier to install the rest of your hardware.
Okay, good. That's it. Done. No, I'm kidding. I still have to finish the install. So this is my little workshop. Now I'm just going to add the last few bolts.
We're now going to take the shorter bolts that come in the kit, place on one of the thicker fender washers, followed by 2 flat washers. We're going to slide that down through our factory hitch, and we're going to thread a serrated nut onto the other side. We'll repeat that on the other side as well.
All right, so at the 11th hour here, I realized that I probably do need to loosen these bolts because I'm trying to take up this last little bit of space. And in order to go vertical, these need to be looser. So I think that's what it's gonna do. It's just gonna bring this mount, it doesn't twist it at all, it's just gonna go straight up like 1/8 of an inch. And I'll do that to both sides. So we'll finish that up and then I can finish tightening all this. All right, that worked perfectly. The day wouldn't be complete without at least one busted knuckle. As you can see, there's a gap there. So that takes away the gap. It's actually tight. The reason there's a little gap there is because of the bow of the metal, but it's definitely tight now. So I think the last thing I'll retighten will be these. So I'm gonna torque the hitch down now, and then I'll come back and I'll retorque the factory hitch. It's actually going pretty well, except for my smashed knuckle, which it's only one. That's not bad today. Oh, my torque wrench broke. My Hellwig Bigwig Swaybar goes up here, and then it goes to this back hole, but it goes on the back side of the plate. I thought maybe it went on the front side of the plate. So it goes like this. If I put a washer on the back side to add a little support, and I'm gonna just tighten it up. This part doesn't really move much. It's kind of locked in this position. It does bend it out slightly this way. You can see the angle now. Not a whole heck of a lot different than how it was before. You know, maybe 1/2 degree different. What I had to do is put my feet against this and push it in. What I would suggest if you're gonna do the install is once you get this plate on and before you put these bolts on, get this up into place and maybe just loosely put this bolt in, because it's a big pain in the butt to get this back up and through here once you get it all torqued down. So learn from me, once you get this piece loosely assembled, get your sway bar up there and connect it. Just don't tighten it until you're completely done. But man, look at the difference. You got 3 bolts in just this amount of area for this hitch. Now, look at the mechanical advantage difference between that and this. This thing is an absolute beast. It's heavy though. The installation really wasn't that bad. I would be happy to do this again now that I've done it. I still have to do the receiver tube, the SuperTruss, but I'll do that tomorrow. But they did a really good job, at least on this truck. It's fairly simple to install. Everything went pretty well. I guess my last thought is my sway bar is supposed to be level. You can see here. Now I can adjust it using this up and down, and it really is inconsequential. I mean, it's not hitting my exhaust pipe yet. Success. It looks good. All right, guys, I'm back. It's the next day. I did a little looking last night, and there weren't too many hardware stores. So there was a Harbor Freight and Home Depot. So I went to Harbor Freight, and I picked up this Icon torque wrench. I retorqued all of my bolts this morning. My old torque wrench did work. It was actually pretty accurate. These were too tight, so I had to loosen them and retighten them. So everything's torqued down. 75 pounds here, 60 pounds for everything else. Double checked everything, so we're good to go on that. Now the next step is the SuperTruss. So I have everything laid out here. All right, so I got all these parts laid out already. Of course, I still need to cut off the plastic. And this thing is heavy. So this, just the extension is like 89 pounds of shipping weight. So these 2 bars are probably a good 60 pounds, maybe 70 pounds. But man, everything in this is beefy. Torklift does not mess around with build quality. Everything is, I would say, probably overbuilt, which is better than underbuilt. All I need to do is mount these in the receiver hitch, and then I can start assembling it. So I'm gonna carry this stuff out there and get to work on it. I think this installation is gonna be much easier than the actual hitch.
Our instructions are gonna tell us to use the top tube, but I think it's a lot easier to work with the bottom first. So we just want to take this and slide it into the bottom opening on our receiver. Then we just want to slide it in and get our pinhole lined up. And we'll just go ahead, slide our pin through and add our retaining pin.
So I am going to be using locking pins with this, but for now, I'm just going to use their supplied pins for installation.
For our top tube, we want our safety chain plates facing down. Then we'll just grab this and carefully slide it into place. Wiggle it a little bit to help that pin go through and add our retaining clip on the other side.
All right, we got the main. Oh, that's right, I need the adapter. So this is the included 2.5 inch to 2 inch receiver tube adapter. Goes in one of these ways. I guess like that. Let me get the manual. Well, there's only one hole, so let me try it. This is already a bad idea. I think I'm gonna put it on here first. Yeah, so it goes this way, because the other way I think isn't gonna fit. Yep, I guess that's the answer for that, is put it on the receiver tube before you put it into the hitch. Wow, this thing's heavy. Wow, what a tank. So install the upper receiver tube with solid shank into the upper receiver of the super hitch. Also install the lower compression tube in the lower receiver of the super hitch. Install using the pin and clips supplied with the super hitch. Did that. Place both collars onto the extension using, all right, let me go get all that stuff.
Now we'll grab our two brackets that look like this. We're just gonna slide one over the top tube and push it all the way up against our safety chain plate. We just wanna take our other plate and get that as centered as possible over that mark.
One goes towards the end, one goes in the middle approximately. And I got these plates, so I'll just keep reading.
We're gonna grab our long bolts. Remember to use 2 flat washers. We're gonna slide those over this. Now we're gonna grab our spacer bracket.
These shim plates are to make up for the thickness differences between the two tubes. A bolt with 2 washers and a shim plate.
We're just gonna slide that underneath here.
So that goes through that side and then
slide our bolt through. And on the other side, we're just gonna pull our bolt back out a little bit. Slide that other spacer through until our hardware comes all the way through. Again, we're gonna add 2 flat washers and our locking nut provided.
got the other shim plate on this side, like that. 2 more washers. And this plate is pretty bent out, so I'll have to get the nut started and tighten it down. This is what I have here. Same thing on this side, but this one's still bent. I think I might stand on that and try to squash it down. I don't even think I can move it. That 1/4-inch plate is strong, wow. Well, good enough. Well, no big deal. I'll tighten this top one first and then that'll clamp it shut so I can get the bottom nut on. Next step is to ride it like a horse.
We'll repeat that process for our bottom hole here and on our back bracket.
2 washers, 2 washers. Because of that bow in this plate, I'm gonna have to tighten the top a little bit to squish it in.
We now want to grab a 19mm socket and wrench and just get these tightened down.
Not enough to tighten it, but just enough to compress the bottom part of this U-bolt strap thing. Still wiggles, but there we go. Now I can get this bottom set of stuff on here. And then same thing here. Okay, good. This top one, I tighten that enough to compress the bottom in, and then this bottom section now reaches, but everything still is loose. Make sure to place one collar in the middle of the extension and the other at the end away from the truck, so at the very back. Looks like butted up right against the chain plate. Okay, so I have to prop up in the halfway position. Let me get a tape measure. 22 up to about 23 1/4, so I need about 22 1/2, maybe 22 3/4. I'll have to come up with something. I'm gonna use the chain plate like they say. So 19 1/2. Now this little camera tripod is not designed to carry much weight. I think I'm gonna put it here just so it's not on the sticker. All right, I need my torque wrench. So 60 foot-pounds. Having this longer torque wrench is nice. Lots more leverage. Okay, so that's torqued. It does bend the bottom plate in slightly, you can see. But 60 pounds, and it seems nice and centered. I like their little trick of, yeah, so that's nice and wiggly. That should come right out. No, it's pretty rugged. Very, very rugged, actually. Okie dokie smoky. Let me pull these pins out. Look at that, that was a little too easy. Yeah, slides in and out. Once I put this on and to put 1,000 miles on it, it's gonna stretch and move and wiggle. So I think since it's a nice fresh install, looks good to me. All right, last but not least are hooking up the chains. Yeah, so the D-rings, the chain, and the turnbuckles should be easy to do. So let me go do that.
Just want to back our pin out, and we'll slide our chain over our shackle. And we want to grab our turnbuckle. We're just going to put the open end through the middle like so, and then tighten this down.
So the assembly is definitely simple. I always have the threaded part of these D-rings down, or shackles I think. So I'm going to put this in like this. I'm going to put this through. And I guess you don't really have to tighten those, you just need them just finger tight. Put some slack into this. These are all closed eye, nice cast or forged, very high quality. So it's easier to get this through. They actually carve out these edges so it fits through here neatly. So I'm going to do it like this, put it on the other end, keep my chain straight.
Now we just want to line the holes up in our shackle with a hole in our hitch. We'll drop our pin through and then tighten it down.
I'm going to tighten both sides so that it doesn't pull it too far one way or the other. And they said just hand tight.
We're just going to tighten this as tight as we can by hand.
All right, and these are some jam nuts.
You can grab a 19 or 3/4 and tighten that against our turnbuckle.
Last but not least,
Now we just want to tighten that down with an 11mm socket and wrench.
the comparison to my old setup is just night and day. I'm definitely feeling more comfortable with this setup than the old setup. It's a huge improvement. Thank you, Torklift, for sending this to me. This is a game changer. Absolutely huge difference. I didn't really know what to expect, but most of the time towing it was okay, but when we hit those really big bumps, highway undulations, you know, you're going 55, 65, and you hit it, and there's nothing you can do. Everything's just slamming around, and I know it's hard, and I was waiting for something to let go. It never did. But this definitely gives me a whole lot more confidence to know that it's going to be fine. I see other people towing massive boats and all that stuff behind it. I have a 4,000 pound cargo trailer. It's not really a big challenge. This is rated for 600 pounds of dead weight on the tongue in a 6,000 pound trailer. No weight distribution, but I do have weight distribution, so that brings it up to 1,200 pounds of tongue weight and 12,000 pounds of trailer. So I could actually tow another small camper behind me, but I'm not going to do that. I just need to tow my little utility trailer down the road. I think this is done. The installation is done. The next step is for me to get on the road and test it out. And I'll be putting the cameras under it the same way I did with my last setup. And keep in mind that this is 14 inches longer. It's even more leverage and more weight. I will say this whole setup being 200 pounds, that means that I'm 200 pounds heavier on the truck. I think it's like 175 pounds. I think it's weight well spent. It's very, very rugged. Very rugged. Crazy rugged. So this whole setup compared to just this. So I mean, the extension works and everything, but the strength is just drastically different. However, I don't have a hitch tightener that's gonna fit this, so it might be a little rattly down the road. I'm not really sure, especially when I get the weight distribution. It might actually cock it up this way. It'll be interesting to see. So I got this installed. I think that's it for this video, because I think this is gonna be a pretty long video. We're gonna be hitting the road in a few days, and we have a 1,000-mile trip to Texas. So that'll be a great test of this. We're gonna have to do that trip in like 3 days, maybe 2. That'll be interesting. I also need to finish installing my tire and heat shield, that's right. I think that's all I have for you for this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try to answer them in the follow-up video to this. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.